Welcome to Interviewing to Get Offers. Let's start off with the different types of interviews that are out there. There are basically screening interviews. These is where people are kind of just checking you out for your relevance, try to get clarity about you are. They're getting some basic evidence about whether you should be a candidate or not. And then there are selection interviews, which is very different. That's when they're going to start probing for skills, learning to understand the impact that you have made and can make, the kind of problems that you can solve. And this can take different shapes and sizes. So, for example, the phone interview, that's very common for a screen where somebody may have just a basic, 2, 3, 4 questions just to kind of get some basics from you, a little more information than exists on your resume to get some clarification whether they want to proceed further with you or not. Phone interview should be taken very seriously because that is sort of a make or break moment to determine whether you actually will get a true interview. So you should be as prepared for those as you are for any in-person interview. The one-on-one interview versus the panel interview, these are two different styles. In the one-on-one, you're actually talking to one person, and then you may talk to another person and to another person. And in a panel style, you may be talking to many people at once. People have different preferences on this. With the one-on-one, you can deal directly and try to build a relationship with that person. In the panel style, you'll get to more of a chance to see the interrelationships between the people from maybe different departments. That could be quite a valuable experience. So what is the goal? Obviously, the goal of an interview is to do what? Is to get another interview. That's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to sell. You're trying to sell yourself to get to the next level. You're trying, depending on how you proceed through the interview process, you're actually hoping to get an offer. What are what must you be good at in order to be good at interviewing is, first and foremost, skillfully gathering all the necessary information, accurately make sense of it, and learn how to deliver an appropriate response. Learn how to ask good questions. Learn how to actively listen. Make sure that you're ensuring that you're understanding what the other person is saying. You're attempting to build trust and rapport and respect with each other. And really, you have to demonstrate the ability to shift your communication skills to support the beliefs, the needs, the culture of the interviewer, who actually, in this case, is the decision maker most of the times. They're the ones that decide whether you're going to move on or you're going to be hired. Almost think of the interviewer as a customer and you're as a salesperson, and the customer has needs and you're trying to meet those needs. Like any sales experience, the spoken impression, a lot of it's nonverbal. A lot of it's the rapport that you're building with folks. It's your tone. And the words you're using, are important, but it's the feeling, it's the emotion that you're bringing to the situation that really seems to matter. Again, think like an employer. Think about their needs first. Think about the responsibilities of the position and the problems that are facing that company. It's good to know what those things are. Your job here is to switch from you against me to you and me against whatever it is we're trying to fix here. So that means a great deal of homework needs to be done. Researching the company. It's the equivalent of a salesperson doing a needs assessment. Prepare your questions. Do as much research as you can, and probe more when you get into the interview situation, right? Have a plan, and establish it so you're setting a goal, you're making your plan, and you're working together to reach a goal. Research, lots of types of research you want to do. You'll want to know about the specific organization or industry. The company's size and location is quite important. Just the size alone can give you some hints. Big companies tend to be very specialized in each department. Smaller companies may not be so specialized, and you may have to take on other duties that you wouldn't, say, in a big company. Understand the markets they're in, the products that they sell, the services that they deliver. Learn who their clients are, who their competitors are. Make sure you know their mission statement, their values, their culture. If there's any history, some companies really care about their history and that you know where they've come from. Other companies may not. They might be just a collection of acquisitions and don't have any one stream of history in place. Make sure you know that going in. Trends in the industry, very important. What's happening, especially in the tech industries. What's changing. And of course, make sure you have read that job description and know that position and its requirements inside and out. Right? Okay. Basically, what we're seeing here is there are two interviews that are happening at the same time. An interviewer is evaluating you and your resume, and at the same time, you are explaining how you're an answer for the company. Especially for that hiring manager, give and take. I find if you are spending a lot of time being asked questions about your resume, that's probably means that things are not going well and they're trying to figure stuff out about you. If you can get it shifted towards issues and problems that you could work on together, and they're interested and want to follow up on your ideas, then things are going very well. You want most of the time spent on that second bullet. The ideal interview is a balance of inputs from the two parties, and hopefully nobody's dominating the other person, but you certainly want your customer to speak as much as possible. There are different kinds of questions that you may get in an interview. One of them is sort of called the behavioral or competency-based questions, and the other one are the open-ended questions. And let's get a little bit into those. Behavioral questions, and right here you'll see there's a website, Quint Careers, where you'll see many questions that you can read what they are. But basically, what is a behavioral or competency question? Research shows, this should be no surprise to anyone, that past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. You'll see questions like, tell me about a time when you worked as a part of a team, or please give me an example of when you solved a problem, or tell me about a time when you had a difficult customer and how did you deal with it, or tell me about a time when you didn't have enough information on a project, and they can go on and on. There are literally dozens and dozens and dozens of these kinds of questions. But the common theme throughout all of them is their past tense, right? They're going backwards in time, and they are looking for specific examples about how you handled something in the past. That's very important to know. So you need to prepare your stories, and we'll get into this in more detail. Prepare your stories, know what you want to talk about before you get there. When you look at your resume, you probably have 5, 6, 7, 8 excellent examples of how you solved problems, and you'll want to make sure that you rehearse your answers to those questions. Now, the trick here is not necessarily to worry about the question that you might be asked. If you have prepared your answers in advance, then you'll find that what are they looking for? They're looking for a specific competency. And many of the problems that you have solved in the past needed more than 1 or 2 or 3 competencies. So you can actually use your story to any of a number of questions. And so the better well rehearsed you are, the better off you're going to be. And frankly, the skill of the interview is which story to use in what situation, right? So you're stating your strengths, right? So if they're asking a question about leadership, and you say something like, I'm a strong leader and a problem solver, that really is not telling them anything. You want to give them an example I redirected a task force to accurately diagnose and solve XYZ technical problems, saving the company $300,000 annually, right? That's something that would be similar to something on your resume, and you can continue to talk about that and how you did it and how you went about it, and they'll probably probe deeper. Communication skills. We're not going to just say, I get along with people. We're going to say, by personally going to the XYZ department several times, asking what their concerns they had, encouraging an exchange of ideas. They became our greatest ally in the marketing process. Don't tell me you have communication skills. Give me an example of where you use your communication skills. There's a classic acronym called the STAR, which basically is how to talk about your story. It's your situation and the task that you faced, the problem, if you will, the actions that you took, and the result or the impact as a result of your efforts. These are 1 or 2 minute explanations. You want to make sure that they're rehearsed. This is a selling technique. What have you done successfully for other companies? How will your experience and professionalism make this next company succeed? You want to make sure you're translating it for them so they can make a connection between your past accomplishments and how you will work for them. Again, what I can do for this company as I have done for others, and why should this company hire me? What's me? What's my secret ingredient, right? So here's an example of a STAR statement. It's a bit long, but I'll go through it. I was promoted to manager of a large division of my company, which had been troubled with high turnover of field sales reps and little or no knowledge transfer as reps exited the company. That sounds like a big problem. So that's the problem statement. Then first I conducted one-on-one interviews with the sales reps to gain insight into their challenges and determined that communication and inadequate internal support were major obstacles. I then utilized contact information software as a big part of the solution. I included the sales reps in the implementation of the software package, helping them to buy into the process. And I was careful to give the team an incentive to use the new software, access to more up-to-date information, enabling them to close more sales. Right? So it's very specific. A lot of skills came out of that explanation. With the help of the new software and some careful management, for the first time the inside sales team received feedback from the field. This enabled inside sales to better support the field, and the two groups formed a team relationship. Total sales increased by 35%, and whenever there was turnover, most of the knowledge transfer was already within the contact management database. So this is a story which basically has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It plays out nicely. It's easy to remember because the problem statement was up front, the solution was related to the problem statement, and many, many, many skills were determined throughout that explanation. So we got to practice these things. You practice your stories. They need to be tailored to the immediate and future needs of the company, right? How well can their needs be filled by you, right? If you did it before, you can do it again. Make sure that the stories are relevant, and when I say relevant, similar outcomes with the previous company and the future company, and similar skills for both, right? Establish your uniqueness. Establish that you're an asset. You can have as many stories as you want. Early in your career, you probably need 3 or 4 or 5. Later in your career, it might be good to have 10. Maybe more than 10. And you should have 10 if you're ready. If you're going for senior level positions, you probably do have quite a number of stories that you can share. All right. Prepare. You got to make them memorable, right? And think about it that they have somebody who you're telling your story to needs to be able to repeat that story to somebody else. And if it's overly complicated, and they say, well, how'd you like Jack? And if they can't relay your story clearly and accurately, that means you didn't do your job, right? Again, having a beginning, a middle, and an end will help them memorize your story so they can retell it on your behalf. Now, there is a technique here called the reversal. You can set the agenda and manage it by asking questions. In this case, we're talking about a clarifying question, right, that you can tack on to the answers when you're answering the interviewer. So, for example, here, yes, in my last position, maintaining good relations with the union representatives while still maintaining strict safety standards was very important. In the last 3 years, we had no safety discipline cases brought to arbitration by the union, and at the same time, we won 2 OSHA safety awards. But it is interesting that you asked that question. Your workers are represented by the Metal Workers Union and have a reputation for pushing hard. Have you been having any trouble, or what problems are you anticipating, right? So this is an example where you're giving them what they want, you're giving them an answer, but you're also probing for more information. You're showing that you care about their problems and that you want to know more. And this technique, the reversal, is something that you should deploy as much as possible in the interview. You're going to pick your spots, maybe 2, 3, 4 times in an interview to probe more deeply. Now, so that's sort of the end of the competency-based interview. Now I'd like to move more toward these open-ended questions. Now, there's a different trick here. Whereas with the competency-based interview, we were saying prepare your answers, don't worry about the questions. In the open-ended, it's a completely different approach. Here, you need to know the intent of why they're asking the question, right? So when they're saying, tell me about yourself, they're really trying to get a top-line view of how you perceive your strengths and weaknesses. Knowing that, you probably want to focus specifically on when you're saying, tell me about yourself, you want to tell them basically how you fit that specific position, what skills you have and experiences you have that fit that particular position, and you want to get that answer across in a short period of time. 10, 15 seconds, 20 at the most. Open-ended questions are not like competency-based questions. The competency questions, you can take a minute or 2 to explain yourself. In the open-ended questions, you want to know the intent of the question and hit the intent head on. Right? Tell me about yourself is the most common example. It's going to be asked in different ways. Know the position, know your skills related to that position, and that's what you're going to tell them. And maybe you can ask, tack on a clarifying question at the end, like, is there anything else you'd like to know about me? Might be a good way to finish that, right? Why do you think we should hire you for this position? Why would I ask this question? Why do you think we should hire you for this position? The operative thing is this position. So the assumption here is that you've read the job description, you know the job description, you know the skills, and the reason we should hire you is because you have those skills. Why are you interested in working here? This is the fit question. Do you understand their culture? This place, what do you know about us? What are the values that you have that match our values? Listen to the question, know the intent. Where do you see yourself in 5 years is a very interesting question. They know you really don't know this answer in detail, but it's a good way for them to understand, do you have a plan? And you can't be too specific to say, I'm going to be a vice president in 5 years, or you can't be too general, and you really don't want to be inappropriate. If you're applying for a marketing job, and say that your 5-year plan is to go to law school, that's going to mess you up. That you're basically giving them a reason why you're no longer a candidate, right? So it's about focus, and focus that benefits them in the long term. For younger employees, candidates, why did you choose your major is kind of the same example. It's actually the reverse question of where do you see yourself in 5 years. It's if you were to go back in time 5 years ago, and I were to ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why'd you choose your major? Well, you want to have answers that shows that you chose your major based on logic, that you had a personal focus to get there. The reason I'm a finance major is because I was always interested in numbers in the stock market, and I love the business, and you want to have that. Terrible answers to this would be that you're running away from something. I became an English major because I was bad at math, for example, would be a terrible answer. But these two questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years and why did you choose your major, is basically the same question. Both of them are looking for focus. What is your greatest accomplishment in life so far? You can actually pick anything. This could be a personal story. This could be a business story. The reason that they're asking it is they want to see what you define as accomplishment, and do your values match their values. It's okay if you pick the example, especially if you're early in your career and don't have work experience yet, and you want to say the greatest accomplishment was burying the three-pointer in a basketball game, and because you want to have the ball in your hands, when the game is on the line, that would be a value of competitiveness, which would be great for certain companies. It may not be the right story for other companies that may not, promote competitiveness in the same way. Nobody is perfect. What would you consider your weakness? This is a great question. Now, what is the intent here? The intent is not to learn your weaknesses. The intent here is to learn whether you can learn. So a good tactic here would be to come up with stories where you improved yourself and continue to improve yourself, whether it's learning a new language and how difficult that was and continues to be, and the things you're putting in place that are making you stronger in that area. How do you deal with adversity? How do you turn things around? That's what you want. That's the intent of the question here. The "you seemed overqualified" question is very annoying. So what you'll need to do, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but what you'll want to do here is continue to talk about why this is the ideal situation. When they use the word overqualified, usually they don't mean overqualified. They mean that they're worried about you, that they don't trust that you're going to stay with them, right? So that's important. Answering open-ended questions. Yes. The "why did you leave" questions. You see this little joke here. Alice, I want you to interview a candidate. Let me know what you think. Why'd you leave your last job? I punched my boss. He's exactly what we need. That's a funny one. Why did we leave questions, right? Don't be negative. You have to be honest, right? You may have had a terrible boss, but in the interview, you're going to talk about what you learned from that boss. If you're going to be talking negative about somebody from your past, the odds are you're going to set up a lack of trust for the person that's sitting in front of you, because they'll suspect that you'll speak negatively about them as well. Focus on what you are looking forward to doing, and never be negative about anything. Always show loyalty to your former employers. That is so critical. All right, open-ended questions, the embarrassing ones. The more embarrassing or sensitive of questions, the shorter that your answers need to be. So if you're asked, why you were leaving, be brief. Although it's tempting to explain and dwell on these things, if you go too deep into it, you're going to arouse suspicions. It's much better to be succinct about this thing. For example, our industry had been experiencing tough economic times, and my position was eliminated when 2 levels were combined into 1. That's a perfectly legitimate answer. Our acquisition by an offshore firm changed the style of management, and I could no longer see the opportunities for personal achievement. Perfectly reasonable answer. Stop, leave it alone. If they want more details, they will ask. Salary questions. Sometimes they're going to back you into a corner and they're going to want an answer. Return the question. Do a reversal on this. Ask for more information to the job. I think it's very okay to just say, that's a great question. Would you mind if I asked you what the range of the position was? And hopefully they will give you that, and you can say, okay, that's fantastic. I'm certainly in that range, and we can negotiate that. Tell them that you're sure that they have a fair approach. They probably have compensation ranges that are already established, which they most likely do. Maybe give your range. Ask for what the position pays. Give a figure that encompasses sort of total compensation. Actually, you want to try to avoid these questions until you know that they're interested in you. If you're talking about salary too early, going back to that very early conversation about a screen, sometimes they're using salary as a screen. So delaying your actual locking down numbers is a good tactic until you can sell your value and get them to want you, right? But if you can keep it vague as long as possible, it'll benefit you going forward. By presenting your value and accomplishments, you may actually be able to establish a high range in their mind. And if they do communicate a range to you, maybe the high end of their range can become the low end of your range. You can do some work up front by learning about salary structures in the company. You can go to salary.com, type in titles, type in cities, and it should give you a little bit of an edge about what the range might be in advance. So I highly recommend you do that research. With these are stressful situations. So here, if the interview stress level is building up, your biggest problem may just be to make sure you've heard the question correctly. It's okay to say, would you repeat yourself, right? If in doubt, ask the question to be repeated and take all the time you need to answer that question, right? Things like that. So, let me think about that for a moment. Is you can do that pretty well. So, it's totally acceptable. Frankly, you can offer too much. So if the question is asked, you want to kind of stick to that. Don't give extra information until you've ascertained that it's going to be helpful to you. You may say things you regret later. More interviews are lost by an applicant giving too much information than giving too little. When you have answered the question, just stop. Don't embellish. Don't elaborate or ramble. Avoid boring details. When you ramble on and on and on, you're turning people off. So just know, for the competency-based questions, a minute, maybe a minute and a half, 2 outside, the most. For the open-ended questions, 20 seconds. Make it a conversation, not a presentation. Be honest. If there's an answer you don't know, that's okay. You can just say that. Okay, back to the you seem overqualified, right? Do you feel like you've hit a glass ceiling in your career? Well, that question has been asked many times. And people have said yes due to age. They have said yes due to other reasons, gender or race. Interestingly, not as much. Age seems to be the one that's the top one. There are a few others as well, but age seems to be the tough one right now. And some people, don't necessarily feel like they've experienced that glass ceiling. It could be an employer is concerned that you will grow dissatisfied and leave based on your background. So overqualified. Really, if you think about it, it's such a weird term. What does an employer want to do when they start the process? Is they actually want to get as many skills as possible for as little cost as possible. So they're actually trying to find somebody who is overqualified, but what they're afraid of is wasting time and money. So in this case, if they think you're just using them as a stepping stone, you want to somehow avoid that. Very likely, what could happen is someone in a higher position. Now this happens quite frequently. This is back to that age discrimination thing. Someone in a higher position than you that you're applying for may feel that they're underqualified to be your boss if you have too much experience. That's sort of a weird thing, but it's true. So if you do your homework thoroughly, you can state your case honestly and sincerely and explain why you want a particular position, why it's attractive to you. There are many people who are doing career changes, who are going from large organizations to small. They understand that they're not going to earn the same levels. They may even not need to or want to make this certainly. They just want to do something different in their life, and they want to give back and use the skills that they've learned in a different way. All right, so this is critical. If you are asked to describe your ideal situation, this position that you're applying to, that you might be overqualified for, right? You don't want to have it come across like it's a stepping stone. You want it to come across like this is exactly what I want to do at this stage of my life. I think I could make a great value. I think I can help this company out. Make it really sound like this is the right position at the right time for this employer, right? Given the time, this is your opportunity to help an interviewer see your situation differently, through a lens of advantages, which theoretically you should be able to bring. That your strong experience means that you'll start to contribute faster, that you'll get the benefit of everything you've learned throughout your career and what other companies have invested in, your training and your experience. How at this stage of your life, long-term commitment is more important than anything, right? And then that you believe that opportunities will come possibly with this company. That's not your initial concern. how this position is exactly where you want to be, and that this is how your current career focus is to really just perform great and be a contributor. That's all you want to be at this time. That's your goal. So you're going to have to come up with your strategy if you have a lot of experience, but how you're going to answer these questions. Right? You will want to ask questions as well. You want to be inquisitive and pull from the employer. You certainly you don't want to be too passive. You want to make sure that you show initiative and interest. You'll need to find out enough about the job, the company, the boss, the environment to be able to carry your campaign forward. So asking questions is a great way to do that. And remember that this is a give and take. You should be sharing the time in an interview between you and the interviewer. There are some traps. Be aware of your nonverbals, your body language, very important. So keep that in mind. You don't want to be long-winded. I tell you that of all of the things, that's probably the worst. Your energy level, you want to keep that up high, right? You want to be tuned in and focused to what they're saying. Notice their style. Absolutely important to mimic their style. You don't want to be too tense. You want to make sure you're fully alert. If the question is coming across as it's too vague, just ask a question. Can you repeat yourself? Can you clarify that, please? All right. So identifying the traps that you typically fall into. When you debrief yourself, learn from them and rehearse better responses. The next time you go out on an interview. Now, here's a question called the qualifying question. Now, I'm going to read it, but you're going to have to tailor this to your style. You're not going to ask this exactly like this. So toward the end of the interview, the applicant might say, "You've had a chance to review my resume. We've talked about it for X amount of time. What do you see that you like?" Right? That's an interesting question, and you may need to find the right words for you about how you're going to say that. But you'd like to know what is it that they're positive about you, so you can continue to sell on that, particularly when you can write your thank you note, whatever. That would be a good thing to know. Is there anything else you would like to know or anything you would like clarified? That's another fantastic question to see where they go with that. Maybe there's something that they're not about to ask you, but maybe if you probe enough that you might get the question that you need to add the information that's puzzling them right now about your candidacy. Now, continuing, again, tailoring this to your style. This is not exactly how you're going to ask it, but tell me, is there anything that would preclude me from being the ideal candidate for this position, right? You would like to know what do they like and what are they concerned about, and you're going to find your own way to ask these questions, but without knowing that, you can walk out with some missed opportunities. Pause, wait for a response, see what they say. All right. The purpose of this question is to discover any concerns regarding you as a candidate for this position. Once you have a response, you can overcome these objectives by responding with more of your star statements, right? Try to restore confidence in your ability, your skills, or anything, any area of concern that they have. Another thing is the close, right? This is probably what most applicants are not so good at. At the conclusion of an interview, you should attempt to close the deal, if you will, right? Summarizing qualifications. This is what any good salesperson would do. The expression of your desire for the position, an expression of your interest and how you'd really like to know how they're going to proceed with the process. You don't want to push too hard or force their commitment at this point. You just want to, show your intense interest in the position. Do not hesitate in providing any requested material that they have. If they ask you for something, make sure like a transcript or a writing sample. Make sure you get it to them. Jump on any opportunity to prove that you will do what you say you're going to do. Very important. Now, asking for the job. Again, you're going to tailor this to your personality, but here's kind of the theme. Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed our session. I like what I see. You now have my qualifications, and I can assure you that I will do a good job for you. I want you to make me an offer. So again, that's very direct, and you may not say it precisely like this, but you do want to express in some ways, this is exactly the situation that you're looking for, and you would anticipate success in this role, and you're very excited to get started, whatever it is. But this is, the close is something that can be very, very helpful in moving your candidacy forward. Right? At the end of the first interview, you're going to ask for any material that you do not have. They might be articles or org charts or something like that that would be useful, and study those for your follow-ups. Second and third interviews will go into more depth about the position. You're going to have to show how you are a problem solver, focus on the company's challenges, their goals, and their priorities. And you want to keep a log about how things are progressing to evaluate your performance, and examine basically assess yourself after each interview. So here's a sample of what that would look like. So the date of your contact, the employer, who you talk to, their contact information, how you found them, and the results. And you can kind of just keep a running chart on these things. Always follow up with a letter. Thank you letters make a fantastic impression. They're going to help you stand out, whether they be an email letter or a handwritten letter. Get the letter out. So many people don't even do it. Get the letter out. And make sure when you're sending your thank you letter that this is really not just saying thank you. This is a selling document that will recap your qualifications, recap your interests, and if there's something you forgot to mention, make sure that's in your thank you note. You're going to use this as a as part of your sell, right? Tell them you're going to follow up. And if you can, somehow get a read on the timing, that would be great. Look for any opportunity possible to be proactive with them. Again, ask questions. Getting feedback is part of the selling process. So maybe you can put something in that letter to distinguish yourself, to say you're looking forward to continue to talk about X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Mistakes, 5 big ones. All right, not addressing the needs of the employer. You must do that. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about addressing their needs. Playing hard to get is, clearly a way to get failure. Talking too much, huge mistake. Boasting, huge mistake. Not listening. So avoid these at all costs. Being unprepared, of course. And now, of course, I have 6 instead of 5. That's interesting. Research findings. 65% of the time, the hired employee meets fewer than 50% of job qualifications. Isn't that interesting? Offers are given to candidates who sell themselves best, right? Intimidate the least and listen the most. The first person interviewed gets hired 18% of the time almost. The last person interviewed is hired almost 56% of the time. That's sort of like an obvious thing. I don't know if that means it's, if you could actually be the last person and get interviewed early in the game. So it makes sense that somebody later in the game would, that they're going to offer somebody who fits their need. If they see them, they're going to hire them. So that actually makes sense. 98% of chief executives would hire a candidate with a good sense of humor. All right, that doesn't mean you're going to crack jokes, but don't be afraid to smile and laugh when appropriate. Being 5 minutes late for an interview upsets 60% of the executives. Being 15 minutes early annoyed 12%, but favorably impressed 45%. Many people who look good on paper before they were interviewed do not make the final list of candidates. The biggest difference between those who are successful and those who are not is the interviewer's communication skills and the ability to exploit the face-to-face interview. Cannot emphasize that enough. Let's see. Worst day of the week, Monday. Worst time, late afternoon. Again, I would take that with a grain of salt. And that's where I'm going to leave it for now. So I hope you found this helpful as you're preparing your plans for interviewing. And best of luck to you in your career search.